I walked away from my son's house 2 days before Christmas, and I didn't look back. Not once. Not when I heard his voice calling after me from the porch, confused and sharp. Not when my phone started buzzing in my purse like an angry wasp. Not when I slid into the taxi and saw his wife's face appear in the upstairs window, her mouth forming a perfect O of shock. I just kept moving forward, because that's what you do when you've finally had enough. My name is Helen Garrett, I'm 63 years old, and for the last 5 years, I've been invisible in my own son's life. Not absent, invisible. There's a difference. Absent means you're not there. Invisible means you're right there in front of people, doing things for them, giving pieces of yourself away, and they look straight through you like you're made of glass. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, and I mean anywhere, whether you're in a small town in Alabama or a city apartment in California or halfway across the globe, leave a comment and tell me where you are. Because I want you to know that what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. It's a story about what happens when the people you love most forget that you're human too. And before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever felt taken for granted, if you've ever felt like the people you raised or the people you married or the people you work for treated you like you were just there to serve them, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story, it's going to take you places you don't expect. And in the description box below, you'll find more stories like this one. Stories about people who got pushed too far and finally pushed back. Check it out when you're done here. You won't regret it. Now, let me take you back to where this really started. 5 years ago, my son Daniel moved back to the city where I live. He'd been gone for almost a decade, building his career, building his life, and when he came back different. Harder. More ambitious. He'd married a woman named Chloe, beautiful, polished, the kind of woman who wore cream-colored cashmere and never seemed to sweat. They bought a house in one of those new developments where every lawn looks like it was cut with scissors and every door is painted the same shade of tasteful gray. I was thrilled when they moved back. Thrilled. I thought I'd get my son back, you know? The boy who used to climb into my lap when he had nightmares, who used to help me bake cookies on Saturday mornings, who used to tell me I was his favorite person in the world. But the man who came back wasn't that boy anymore. The first time I visited their new house, Chloe gave me a tour that felt more like an inspection than a welcome. She pointed out the marble countertops, the custom cabinetry, the imported tile in the bathrooms. Everything was expensive, everything was perfect, everything was designed to impress. We worked so hard for this, she said, running her hand along the kitchen island like it was made of gold. And I smiled and nodded and said all the right things, because that's what mothers do. What I didn't say was, I worked hard too. I raised your husband by myself after his father walked out when Daniel was 7. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years so he could go to college without drowning in debt. I drove him to baseball practice and piano lessons and debate tournaments. I sat up with him when he was sick. I believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. But none of that mattered anymore, apparently. Because the version of me that existed in Daniel's memory had been edited down to something small and soft and forgettable. I wasn't the woman who raised him. I was just Mom. Just someone who showed up when summoned and left when dismissed. It started small, the way these things always do. Mom, could you watch the house while we're in Barcelona? Just water the plants and bring in the mail. Mom, Chloe's been so stressed with her new job. Could you come over and help with the laundry? Mom, we're hosting a dinner party on Friday. Could you come early and help set up? Nothing fancy, just, get things ready. And I said yes. Every time. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You show up. You help. You give. But here's the thing about giving, people get used to it. They start to expect it. And eventually, they stop seeing it as a gift and start seeing it as your job. By the 2nd year, I wasn't being asked anymore. I was being told. Mom, we need you here at 3 on Saturday. Chloe's parents are coming over and the house is a disaster. Mom, can you pick up groceries on your way? Here's a list. Oh, and grab the good wine, not the cheap stuff. Mom, the guest bathroom needs to be deep cleaned before the holidays. You're so good at that stuff. So good at that stuff. Like I was born with a scrub brush in my hand and a smile on my face. I kept showing up, though. I kept helping. Because I told myself that's what family does. I told myself that maybe if I was useful enough, needed enough, Daniel would remember that I was more than just a woman who could fold his towels and organize his pantry. But you can't make someone see you by becoming smaller. I learned that the hard way. The breaking point came 2 days before Christmas, on a cold Wednesday afternoon that started like any other. I was at home, wrapping presents for my neighbors and listening to Bing Crosby on the radio, when my phone rang. Daniel's name lit up the screen. I answered on the second ring, the way I always did. "Hey, sweetheart." "Mom. I need you to come over." Not "Hey, Mom." Not "How are you?" Just, "I need you to come over." I could hear the edge in his voice, the tension that meant he was stressed about something and needed me to fix it. I glanced at the half-wrapped presents on my coffee table, the pot of soup simmering on the stove, the quiet afternoon I'd been looking forward to. "Right now?" I asked. "Yeah. It's important." I grabbed my coat. When I got to his house 20 minutes later, Daniel was in the driveway, arms crossed, jaw tight. Chloe was standing beside him in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, scrolling through her phone with the detached air of someone who had better things to do. "What's wrong?" I asked, climbing out of my car. Daniel didn't waste time. "Chloe's parents want to spend Christmas here this year. With her whole family." I blinked. "That's so nice." "There's 43 people, Mom." 43. I felt something cold slide down my spine. "They're arriving Christmas Eve," Daniel continued, as if he were telling me about the weather. "So we need the house spotless. And we'll need food. A lot of food. Chloe and I have been talking, and we think it makes the most sense if you handle the cooking." I stared at him. "Handle the cooking?" "Yeah. You know. Turkey, sides, desserts. The whole thing. You're so good at it." There it was again. That phrase. "You're so good at it." Like being good at something meant I owed it to everyone else. "And the cleaning," Chloe added, not looking up from her phone. "The guest rooms need fresh linens, the bathrooms need to be scrubbed, and we'll probably need help setting up the dining room." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. At the man I'd raised to be kind and thoughtful and grateful. The man who was standing in front of me now, asking me to cook and clean for 43 people like I was the help. "Daniel," I said slowly, "it's 2 days before Christmas." "I know. That's why I'm telling you now." He said it like he was doing me a favor. Like he was giving me plenty of notice to rearrange my entire life for his convenience. I felt something crack inside me. Something I'd been holding together for 5 years with duct tape and hope. "Mom, you'll do it, right?" Daniel asked, and for the first time, I heard something in his voice that made my stomach turn. Expectation. Not a question. Not a request. Expectation. He expected me to say yes. He expected me to drop everything. He expected me to cook and clean and smile and serve, because that's what I always did. And standing there in his driveway, watching him look at me like I was a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved, I realized something. I was done. I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. The kind of smile that says, "You have no idea what's about to happen." "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "I'll take care of everything." Daniel's shoulders relaxed. Chloe finally looked up from her phone and gave me a tight little nod, like she was granting me permission to exist. "Thanks, Mom," Daniel said. "I knew we could count on you." I got back in my car and drove away. And that night, I booked a flight to New York City. Let me tell you something about becoming invisible. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not like you wake up one morning and discover that everyone around you has stopped seeing you. No. It's gradual. It's a slow fade, like a photograph left too long in the sun. One day you're vivid and bright and impossible to ignore, and then, without realizing when it started, you're just a pale outline of what you used to be. I didn't always feel invisible. There was a time, God, it feels like a lifetime ago now, when I was the kind of woman people noticed. Not because I was beautiful, though I wasn't hard to look at. Not because I was rich or powerful or important. But because I was alive in a way that demanded attention. I was 22 when I met Daniel's father, Robert. We met at a 4th of July barbecue at a friend's house, and I remember the exact moment I saw him across the yard, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a smile that could make you forget your own name. He was funny and charming and so confident that being around him felt like standing in the sun. We were married 10 months later. I thought I'd found my person. You know? My partner. The man I'd grow old with. The man who'd hold my hand through every season of life. But Robert had a different version of our story in his head. In his version, I was supposed to stay frozen at 22, young and adoring and endlessly impressed by everything he did. In his version, I wasn't supposed to grow or change or want anything for myself. When I got pregnant with Daniel, Robert was thrilled. For about 3 months. Then the reality of parenthood set in, the sleepless nights, the crying, the way a baby reorganizes your entire life around their needs. And Robert decided he wasn't interested in that part. "You're so good with him," he'd say, waving a hand at the baby in my arms as he headed out the door to meet friends or play golf or do whatever it was he did when he wasn't home. "You've got this. You're so good at it." Even then, I was hearing that phrase. I told myself it was fine. I told myself that's just how some men were, that they loved their kids but didn't know how to show up for the hard parts. I told myself I was strong enough to carry the weight for both of us. But here's the truth, you can carry a lot of weight before your knees start to buckle. And nobody notices you're struggling until you're already on the ground. When Daniel was 7, Robert came home from work one evening, set his briefcase on the kitchen counter, and said, "I'm leaving." Just like that. No build-up. No fight. No explanation that made any kind of sense. "I'm not happy," he said, like that was supposed to be enough. Like his happiness was the only thing that mattered. "I need to figure out who I am." He walked out that night with 2 suitcases and a forwarding address I never called. Daniel cried himself to sleep for weeks. He kept asking when Daddy was coming back, and I kept telling him soon, "Sweetheart, soon," even though I knew Robert wasn't coming back. Even though I could feel the truth sitting heavy in my chest like a stone. I was 29 years old, alone with a second grader and a mortgage and no idea how I was going to keep our life from falling apart. So I did what women have been doing forever. I got up every morning and I kept going. I took a job as a receptionist at a law firm downtown. The pay was terrible, but it had benefits, and benefits meant Daniel could see a doctor when he got sick without me having to choose between medicine and groceries. At night, after I put Daniel to bed, I took online courses in accounting and business management, because I knew I needed to be able to do more than answer phones if I wanted to give my son a real future. By the time Daniel was in middle school, I'd worked my way up to office manager. By the time he was in high school, I'd moved to a mid-sized consulting firm where I coordinated projects, managed budgets, and kept a team of people organized and on track. I was good at my job. Really good. People respected me there. They listened when I spoke. They trusted my judgment. I wasn't invisible in that office, I was essential. But at home, I was just Mom. The woman who made dinner and did laundry and showed up at every parent-teacher conference and baseball game and school play. The woman who stayed up late helping Daniel with algebra homework and college applications. The woman who believed in him so fiercely that I never stopped to wonder if he believed in me too. I thought he saw me. I really did. When Daniel got accepted to college, a good school, the kind of school that opens doors, I cried with pride. I helped him pack his dorm room, and when I hugged him goodbye, he whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." And I believed him. I believed that all those years of sacrifice and hard work and showing up had added up to something. That Daniel understood what I'd given him. That he'd carry that gratitude with him into adulthood. But memory is a funny thing. It's selective. It reshapes the past into something easier to carry. And somewhere along the way, Daniel's memory of me got smaller and softer and less complicated. I wasn't the woman who worked 2 jobs and put herself through night school so he could have a better life. I was just Mom. The person who was always there. The person who always said yes. After Daniel graduated and moved away, I kept working. I kept building my career. I got promoted to senior project manager, then director of operations. I traveled for work, Boston, Chicago, Denver, Atlanta. I managed million-dollar projects and led teams of people who respected my expertise. I was good at what I did. People knew my name. People valued my opinion. But when I came home for the holidays, when Daniel called to check in, when I visited him in whatever city he was living in at the time, I could feel myself shrinking back into that smaller version of myself. The version that didn't take up too much space. The version that was just Mom. It didn't bother me at first. I told myself it was natural, that kids see their parents a certain way, and that's okay. That I didn't need Daniel to see me as a colleague or a leader or a professional. I just needed him to see me as his mother. But then he moved back. And things changed. Or maybe they didn't change. Maybe I just finally started paying attention. When Daniel and Chloe asked me to help with things around their house, I said yes because I thought it was temporary. I thought it was just a busy season, just a stressful time, just a few favors here and there. But the favors kept coming. And they got bigger. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being Daniel's mother and started being his assistant. No, worse than that. His maid. The woman who showed up when he needed something and disappeared when he didn't. And the worst part? I let it happen. I let it happen because I was afraid that if I said no, if I set boundaries, if I reminded him that I was a person with my own life and my own needs, he'd pull away. He'd stop calling. He'd stop needing me. And if he didn't need me, who was I? That's the question that kept me awake at night in the months before that Wednesday afternoon 2 days before Christmas. That's the question that made me say yes over and over again, even when every yes made me feel smaller and more invisible. If Daniel didn't need me, who was I? But standing in his driveway, listening to him tell me to cook and clean for 43 people like it was nothing, like I was nothing, I finally found my answer. I was Helen Garrett. I was 63 years old, and I'd spent my entire adult life proving that I was capable and strong and worth more than the people in my life seemed to think. And I was done proving it to my son. That night, after I left Daniel's house, I went home and sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my laptop. I pulled up a travel website and stared at the screen for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest like I was about to do something dangerous. Then I booked a flight to New York City. I booked a hotel room in Manhattan, not a budget place, not something practical, but a beautiful hotel with a view of Central Park and a lobby that looked like something out of a movie. I booked tickets to a Broadway show and reservations at restaurants I'd always wanted to try. I booked a full day at a spa where women with soft voices would treat me like I was someone who mattered. I booked a life that had nothing to do with being useful. And when I was done, I called an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years, someone who'd moved to New York for work and always told me I should come visit. "Janet," I said when she answered. "It's Helen. Are you free for Christmas?" And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. The thing about revenge is that it's not always loud. Sometimes revenge is quiet. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's choosing yourself when everyone expects you to choose them. That's what I kept telling myself as I sat at my kitchen table that night, staring at the confirmation email for my flight to New York. My hands were shaking, not from fear, exactly, but from something bigger. Adrenaline. Anger. Relief. Freedom. Because for the first time in 5 years, I'd made a choice that had nothing to do with what Daniel needed and everything to do with what I wanted. And it felt terrifying. And it felt right. Let me be clear, I'm not a vengeful person by nature. I don't enjoy conflict. I don't get satisfaction from making people squirm. If you'd asked me a week earlier if I was capable of doing something like this, of walking away from my son 2 days before Christmas and leaving him to deal with the mess he'd created, I would have laughed and said absolutely not. But there's something that happens when you reach the end of yourself. When you've given and given and given until there's nothing left to give, and the people you've been giving to don't even notice because they're too busy asking for more. Something inside you hardens, calcifies, becomes something sharp and unyielding. And you realize, I don't have to do this anymore. That's where I was that night. I'd reached the end of Helen the helper, Helen the accommodator, Helen the woman who always says yes. And in her place, someone new was starting to emerge. Someone who said no. I didn't tell Daniel about the trip right away. Part of me, okay, a big part of me, wanted to savor the secret for a little while. To hold it close and feel the power of it, the sheer audacity of what I was about to do. Because here's the thing, Daniel had no idea I was capable of this. In his mind, I was predictable. I was reliable. I was the woman who showed up when he called and did what he asked and never, ever pushed back. He'd gotten so comfortable with that version of me that he'd forgotten I was anything else. But I hadn't forgotten. The next morning, Thursday, 2 days before Christmas, I woke up with a plan. It wasn't a complicated plan. It didn't involve elaborate schemes or dramatic confrontations. It was actually incredibly simple. I was going to do exactly what Daniel had asked me to do. Nothing. I wasn't going to show up. I wasn't going to cook. I wasn't going to clean. I wasn't going to prepare his house for 43 guests. I was just going to leave. But here's where it got interesting. I wasn't going to tell him. I could have called him that morning and said, "Daniel, I'm not doing this. You're on your own." That would have been the mature, direct approach. That would have given him time to figure out an alternative plan, to order catering, to hire a cleaning service, to deal with the problem like an adult. But where was the lesson in that? If I told him I wasn't coming, he'd just find another solution. He'd throw money at the problem until it went away. He'd complain to Chloe about how unreliable I was, how I'd let them down at the worst possible time. He'd never understand what he'd done wrong. No. I needed him to arrive at understanding the hard way. So I spent Thursday getting ready. I went to the bank and withdrew some cash for the trip. I stopped by the post office to put a hold on my mail. I called my neighbor, Patricia, a lovely woman in her 70s who looked after my plants when I traveled for work, and asked if she could keep an eye on the house for a few days. Going somewhere fun? Patricia asked. New York, I said, and just saying it out loud made my heart race. Just a little Christmas getaway. Good for you, Helen, Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You deserve it. You deserve it. When was the last time someone had said that to me? That afternoon, Daniel called. I was in my bedroom, packing a suitcase, when my phone lit up with his name. I almost didn't answer. But then I thought, if I don't answer, he'll get suspicious. He'll know something's wrong. So I picked up on the third ring, keeping my voice light and casual. Hi, sweetheart. Hey, Mom. Just checking in about tomorrow. You're still good to come over early, right? Like, 8 in the morning. 8 in the morning. Christmas Eve. To start cooking for 43 people. I folded a sweater and laid it carefully in my suitcase. Of course. Great. Chloe made a list of everything we need. I'll text it to you. Oh, and can you stop at that bakery on 5th Street and pick up some of those dinner rolls they make? The ones with the rosemary. Sure. You're the best, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you. I stared at my reflection in the mirror across the room. At the woman looking back at me, a woman in her 60s with grey-streaked hair and tired eyes and a lifetime of being told she was the best while being treated like she was nothing. Daniel, I said quietly. Yeah. I almost told him then. I almost said, I'm leaving. I'm going to New York, and you're going to have to figure this out yourself. I almost gave him the honesty he deserved, even if he hadn't earned it. But then I heard Chloe's voice in the background, sharp and impatient. Is she going to get the roles or not? And just like that, the moment passed. Nothing, I said. I'll see you tomorrow. 8 a.m., don't forget. I won't. I hung up and finished packing. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about what was going to happen when Daniel arrived at his house on Christmas Eve and realized I wasn't there. I kept imagining his face, the confusion, the frustration, the slow dawning realization that I wasn't coming to save him. Part of me felt guilty. That's the thing about being a mother. The guilt never really goes away. Even when you're doing the right thing, even when you're standing up for yourself, there's still this voice in your head whispering that you're being selfish, that you're failing, that you're letting everyone down. But there was another part of me, a part that had been quiet for so long I'd almost forgotten it existed, that felt something else. Excitement. I was 63 years old, and I was about to get on a plane to New York City by myself. I was about to spend Christmas doing exactly what I wanted to do, with no one to answer to and no one to take care of. I was about to be free. If you've ever felt trapped by the expectations other people have put on you, if you've ever felt like you're living someone else's life instead of your own, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't felt that way yet, trust me, bookmark this story. Check the description box below for more stories like this one, because one day you might need the reminder that it's okay to choose yourself. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're just getting started. This story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. The next morning, Christmas Eve, I woke up at 5 a.m. My flight was at 11, which gave me plenty of time to get to the airport. I took a long shower, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table watching the sun come up. At 7:45, my phone rang. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. At 8 o'clock, he called again. Voicemail. At 8:15, Chloe called. Voicemail. At 8:30, Daniel called 3 times in a row, and I could practically feel his panic through the phone. I turned the phone off. Then I picked up my suitcase, walked out the door, and locked it behind me. The taxi I'd called was waiting at the curb. The driver, a kind-looking man in his 50s, loaded my suitcase into the trunk and held the door open for me. Airport, he asked. Airport, I confirmed. As we pulled away from my house, I looked back one last time. At the little brick home I'd lived in for 30 years. At the life I was leaving behind for a few days. And I smiled. Because I wasn't running away. I was running toward something. Toward myself. I found out later, much later, what happened at Daniel's house that morning. Chloe's family started arriving around 9 a.m. Her parents came first, driving a rental van loaded with suitcases and presents and coolers full of food they'd brought from their own kitchen because, as Chloe's mother apparently said, I don't trust anyone else's cooking. Ironic, considering they were expecting me to cook for all 43 of them. Daniel and Chloe were standing in the driveway when the van pulled up, both of them smiling those tight, performative smiles people wear when they're stressed but trying to hide it. From what Daniel told me later, Chloe's mother took one look at the house and said, well, it's smaller than I remembered, but I suppose we'll make it work. Merry Christmas to you too, lady. More family started trickling in over the next hour. Aunts, uncles, cousins, second cousins, Chloe's brother and his wife and their 4 kids. Every time someone new arrived, Daniel's anxiety cranked up another notch, because I still hadn't shown up. He'd been calling me all morning. When I didn't answer, he told Chloe I was probably just running late, stuck in traffic, dealing with some last-minute errand. She'll be here, he kept saying. She always shows up. She always shows up. God, if that doesn't just sum up his entire perception of me. By 10 a.m., the house was packed. 43 people crammed into a 4-bedroom home that was designed for aesthetics, not practicality. Kids were running through the hallways. Adults were claiming bedrooms and arguing over who got the guest bath with the good shower. Someone turned on Christmas music. Someone else turned it off. Chloe's mother was walking through the house with a critical eye, making little comments about the furniture and the artwork and the interesting color choices. And Daniel was standing in the kitchen, staring at his phone, wondering where the hell I was. At 10:30, he called me again. It went straight to voicemail because I turned my phone off. By that point, I was already at the airport, sitting at my gate with a magazine and a latte, feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. At 11 o'clock, Chloe found Daniel in the kitchen and said, "Where's your mother?" "I don't know," Daniel said. "She's not answering." "Well, we need food. Like, now. People are getting hungry." Daniel looked at the empty counters, the pristine stove that hadn't been turned on, the refrigerator that contained nothing but some leftover takeout and a half-empty carton of oat milk. And for the first time, a little thread of panic started to wind its way through his chest. "She'll be here," he said again, but this time he sounded less certain. Chloe crossed her arms. "Daniel. It's 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Your mother was supposed to be here at 8. Where is she?" "I don't know." "Well, call her again." He did. Voicemail. He called my house. No answer. He called Patricia, my neighbor. She picked up on the second ring, cheerful and bright. "Oh, hi Daniel. Merry Christmas." "Patricia. Hi. Is my mom home? I've been trying to reach her all morning." "Home? No, sweetheart. She left early this morning. Didn't she tell you? She's in New York for the holidays." There was a long, long silence. "New York?" Daniel repeated, his voice strangled. "Yes." She looked so excited. "I think she's staying in Manhattan. Good for her, honestly. She deserves a nice vacation." Daniel hung up without saying goodbye. He stood there in his empty kitchen, his beautiful, expensive, completely unprepared kitchen, and felt the full weight of the situation crash down on him. I wasn't coming. I wasn't late. I wasn't stuck in traffic. I wasn't dealing with some emergency. I had left. Daniel. Chloe's voice was sharp now, edged with anger. What did Patricia say? He turned to look at her, and his face was pale. "She's in New York." "What?" "My mom. She's in New York." "What do you mean she's in New York? She's supposed to be here. She's supposed to be cooking." "I know." "Well, call her. Tell her to come back." "I can't, her phone is off." This is the moment I wish I could have seen. This is the moment when it finally started to sink in for Daniel that I wasn't the woman he thought I was. That I wasn't just going to show up and fix his problems and make everything easy for him. That I was done. Chloe's mother appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression pinched with irritation. Is there a problem? No, Chloe said quickly. Everything's fine. Because people are asking about lunch. It's nearly noon. We're working on it. Chloe's mother looked at the empty counters, the cold stove. Working on it how, exactly? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a fish gasping for air. We'll order something, Chloe said. Order something? 443 people? On Christmas Eve. And that's when the real chaos started. Daniel spent the next 3 hours on the phone, calling every restaurant, every catering company, every grocery store within a 20-mile radius. Most of them were closed for the holiday. The ones that were open were either fully booked or flat out laughed when he asked if they could prepare a meal for 43 people with 3 hours' notice. One woman at a catering company said, "Honey, even if I wanted to help you, my entire staff is off for Christmas. You should have called us 2 weeks ago. You should have called us 2 weeks ago. Or, I don't know, maybe you should have asked your mother 2 weeks ago instead of 2 days ago and expected her to drop everything for you." Just a thought. By 2 p.m., Chloe's family was getting restless. The kids were whining about being hungry. The adults were making passive-aggressive comments about how disorganized everything was. Chloe's mother kept saying things like, "Well, at our house, we always plan ahead," which made Chloe's jaw tighten and Daniel's face turn red. Chloe pulled Daniel into the hallway and hissed, "This is a disaster. My entire family is here, and we have nothing to feed them. How could your mother do this to us?" And here's the thing that gets me, the thing that makes my blood boil even now, months later. Even in that moment, even when everything was falling apart, Daniel didn't stop to ask himself why I'd left. He didn't think, what did I do to make her feel like this was her only option? He didn't think, have I been taking her for granted? He didn't think, maybe I should have appreciated her more when I had the chance. No. He thought, how could she do this to us? Like I was the villain. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. By 3 p.m., Daniel finally managed to find a pizza place that was open and willing to deliver. He ordered 15 pizzas, a mix of pepperoni, cheese, and supreme, and prayed it would be enough. When the pizzas arrived, Chloe's mother took one look at the stack of cardboard boxes and said, in a voice dripping with disdain, "Pizza. For Christmas Eve dinner." "It's all we could get," Chloe said through gritted teeth. "Well, I suppose beggars can't be choosers." The meal was tense. 43 people crowded around a dining room table meant for 8, eating lukewarm pizza off paper plates because Daniel and Chloe didn't own enough real dishes. The kids complained that they didn't like the toppings. The adults made polite conversation that barely concealed their disappointment. Chloe's brother made a joke about how rustic everything was, and nobody laughed. And through it all, Daniel sat at the head of the table with his phone in his lap, checking it every few minutes, hoping I'd call. I didn't. Because at that exact moment, I was sitting in a restaurant in Manhattan, a beautiful place with white tablecloths and candles and windows overlooking the city, eating the best meal I'd had in years. My friend Janet was across from me, laughing at something I'd said, and I was drinking wine that didn't come from a bottle with a screw top, and I was wearing a dress I'd bought specifically for this trip, a dress that made me feel elegant and alive. I was having the time of my life. And my son was eating pizza out of a box, surrounded by his in-laws, finally understanding what it felt like when someone you counted on didn't show up. Later that night, much later, after Chloe's family had dispersed to their various sleeping arrangements throughout the house, after the kids had been wrestled into bed, after the mountain of pizza boxes had been shoved into the recycling bin, Daniel sat alone in his living room. Chloe had gone upstairs without saying goodnight, her face tight with humiliation and anger. He could hear people moving around above him, whispering, probably talking about what a disaster the day had been. He pulled out his phone one more time and called my number. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. And then I answered. I turned my phone back on after dinner, figuring enough time had passed. I was back in my hotel room, changed into comfortable pajamas, sitting by the window and watching the lights of the city sparkle below me. When I saw Daniel's name on the screen, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail again. Part of me wasn't ready for this conversation. But I answered. Hello, Daniel. Mom. His voice cracked on the word, and I could hear everything in it. Anger, confusion, hurt, desperation. Where are you? I told you. I'm in New York. Why? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. Because I wanted to be. But, Mom, we needed you. Chloe's whole family was here, and there was no food, and we had to order pizza, and it was a disaster. I supplied. Yes. I took a breath. Daniel, did it ever occur to you to ask me if I wanted to spend my Christmas cooking for 43 strangers? Silence. Did it ever occur to you that I might have had other plans? That I might have wanted to do something for myself for once? But you said you'd take care of everything. I know what I said. And I lied. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, processing this. Processing the idea that his mother, reliable, predictable Helen, had looked him in the eye and lied to him. I don't understand, he said finally. Why would you do this? And there it was. The question I'd been waiting for. The question that proved he still didn't get it. Daniel, I said, and my voice was quieter now, sadder. When was the last time you asked me about my life? About my work, my friends, my interests? When was the last time you called me just to talk, not because you needed something? Another silence. When was the last time you treated me like I was a person instead of a service? That's not, I don't. You called me 2 days before Christmas and told me to cook for 43 people. Not asked. Told. Like it was my job. Like I didn't have a choice. I thought you wouldn't mind. You thought I wouldn't mind. Or you thought I wouldn't say no. He didn't answer. I'm 63 years old, Daniel. I've spent the last 5 years being available whenever you called, helping whenever you asked, showing up whenever you needed me. And do you know what I got in return? Mom. More requests. More expectations. More reminders that I'm so good at whatever you need me to be good at. But you know what you never said? Thank you. You know what you never asked. Is this too much? Can I help you? What do you need? I could hear him starting to cry, and it broke something in me. Because I didn't want to hurt my son. I never wanted to hurt him. But I also couldn't keep hurting myself. I love you, I said. I will always love you. But I'm not going to keep making myself small so you can feel comfortable. I'm not going to keep saying yes when I want to say no. And I'm not going to keep showing up for someone who only sees me when they need something. I do see you, Daniel whispered. No, sweetheart. You don't. But maybe now you'll start. I hung up before he could respond. And then I turned off my phone again, climbed into the most comfortable bed I'd ever slept in, and fell asleep to the sound of the city humming below me. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up once. Christmas morning in New York City is its own kind of magic. I woke up early, old habits die hard, and lay in bed for a few minutes, listening to the muted sounds of the city waking up below me. No alarm. No obligations. No one waiting for me to make their breakfast or open their presents or pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. Just me. I got up and made coffee in the little machine they had in the room, not as good as my coffee at home, but good enough. I stood by the window in my pajamas, watching the sun come up over Central Park, watching the bare trees catch the light, watching joggers and early morning walkers move through the pathways like tiny figures in a snow globe. I thought about Daniel. I wondered if he'd slept at all last night, or if he'd stayed up stewing over our conversation. I wondered if Chloe's family was giving him hell this morning, or if they were all just pretending yesterday hadn't been a complete catastrophe. Mostly, I wondered if he understood yet. If he'd had that moment of clarity where you suddenly see yourself from the outside and realize, oh God, I've been terrible. I hoped he had. But I wasn't counting on it. People don't change because you want them to. They change when the cost of staying the same becomes too high. And maybe, just maybe, yesterday had cost Daniel something. I pushed the thought away and got dressed. I'd made plans for today, and I was going to enjoy every single minute of them. Janet had invited me to spend Christmas Day with her family, her husband Tom, their 2 grown daughters, and their grandson. They lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn, the kind of place that looked like it had been pulled straight from a storybook, with a red door and window boxes and a tiny front garden. When I arrived, bearing wine and flowers because some habits are too ingrained to break, Janet opened the door and pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home. "Merry Christmas, you rebel," she whispered in my ear, and I laughed. Janet and I had worked together 20 years ago, back when we were both climbing the corporate ladder and figuring out how to be women in spaces that didn't always want us there. She'd moved to New York 15 years ago when her husband got a job offer he couldn't refuse, and we'd stayed in touch through emails and occasional phone calls, promising each other we'd visit soon, the way people always do when they mean it, but life keeps getting in the way. This was the first time I'd actually followed through. Janet's family welcomed me like I was one of their own. There was no awkwardness, no polite distance, no careful navigation of family dynamics. Just warmth and laughter and the comfortable chaos of people who genuinely liked each other. We spent the afternoon cooking together, Janet and her daughters and me, all of us crowded into her kitchen, chopping vegetables and telling stories and drinking wine. It was the kind of cooking I loved, collaborative, joyful, unpressured. No one was barking orders at me. No one was criticizing my technique. We were just making food together because we wanted to. And here's the thing that struck me as I stood there, laughing at one of Janet's daughter's stories about her disastrous attempt at making sourdough. I was having fun. When was the last time I'd had fun cooking? When had it become a chore instead of a pleasure? Somewhere along the way, the things I used to enjoy, cooking, hosting, taking care of people, had turned into obligations. Into expectations. Into the price I had to pay to be loved. And I hadn't even noticed it happening. We sat down to dinner around 3 o'clock, and it was perfect. Not perfect in the Instagram polished, carefully curated way that Chloe would have demanded. Perfect in the messy, real way that actually matters. The turkey was slightly overdone. Someone forgot to put the butter on the table. Janet's grandson spilled his juice, and everyone just laughed and cleaned it up. And through it all, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt seen. Janet's family asked me about my work, about my life, about my hobbies. They listened when I talked. They asked follow-up questions. They treated me like I was interesting, like my thoughts and opinions mattered, like I was more than just someone's mother or someone's helper. So Helen, Tom said at one point, Janet tells me you're a director of operations. That's impressive. What's that like? And I found myself talking about my job, really talking about it, not just giving the abbreviated version I'd gotten used to giving when people asked out of politeness. I told them about the projects I was managing, the teams I was leading, the challenges I was navigating. I told them about the acquisition my company was going through and how I was helping to integrate 2 different corporate cultures. They were actually interested. That sounds incredibly complex, one of Janet's daughters said. How do you manage all the different personalities? How do you manage all the different personalities? Not, that must be nice. Not, good for you. Not, asterisk polite smile and subject change asterisk. They wanted to know. They valued what I did. They saw me as more than just a woman in her 60s who existed to make other people's lives easier. After dinner, we played board games, something I hadn't done in years. Janet's grandson, who was 7 and adorable and had no filter, decided I was his new best friend and insisted I be on his team for every game. You're really good at this, he told me seriously after we won our 3rd round of Pictionary. You should come back and visit us more. Out of the mouths of babes. That night, after I'd said my goodbyes and taken the subway back to Manhattan, after I'd walked through the lobby of my hotel and ridden the elevator up to my floor, I stood in my room and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I looked different somehow. Lighter. Younger. Like I'd set down something heavy I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I pulled out my phone and turned it on. 17 missed calls from Daniel. 8 voicemails. 12 text messages. I sat on the edge of the bed and started reading the texts. The first few were angry. Asterisk mom. Call me back. This isn't funny. Asterisk. Asterisk I can't believe you would do this to us. Asterisk. Asterisk Chloe's parents think you did this on purpose to embarrass us. Asterisk. Then they shifted to guilt. Asterisk everyone's asking where you are and I don't know what to tell them. Asterisk. Asterisk this is really hurtful, Mom. Asterisk. Asterisk I thought we were closer than this. Asterisk. And finally, late last night, something that looked like the beginning of understanding. Asterisk I think I get why you're upset. Can we talk? Asterisk. I stared at that last message for a long time. Part of me wanted to call him right then. To hear his voice, to start the process of repairing what I'd broken. Because even though I knew I'd done the right thing, even though I didn't regret my choice, I still miss my son. But another part of me, the part that was still learning how to stand up for herself, knew it was too soon. Daniel needed to sit with this discomfort for a while longer. He needed to feel what it was like when the person you take for granted isn't there anymore. He needed to understand that I wasn't just going to forgive and forget and go back to the way things were. Because the way things were was killing me. So instead of calling, I sent a single text. I'm fine. I'm safe. I'm having a wonderful Christmas. We'll talk when I get home. Then I turned off my phone again. The next few days in New York were some of the best days I'd had in years. I saw a Broadway show, a matinee performance of a musical I'd been wanting to see for ages. I cried during the emotional numbers and laughed during the funny ones, and I didn't feel self-conscious about either response because I was surrounded by strangers who didn't know me and didn't care. I went to museums, the Met, MoMA, the Natural History Museum. I stood in front of paintings that made my chest ache with their beauty. I read plaques and listened to audio guides and took my time, because there was no one waiting for me, no one checking their watch, no one sighing with impatience. I walked through Central Park and Greenwich Village and Soho. I went into little shops and bookstores and cafes. I bought myself things I didn't need, a silk scarf, a leather journal, a ridiculously expensive candle, just because I wanted them. I had dinner with Janet 2 more times, and we talked about everything, our careers, our marriages, hers successful, mine failed, our kids, hers thriving, mine, well, our dreams for what came next. I think I want to travel more, I told her one night over Thai food in the East Village. I've spent so much time being available for everyone else that I never stopped to think about what I wanted to do. So what do you want to do? Janet asked. And I realized I didn't know. I'd been so focused on being needed that I'd forgotten how to have wants. I think I need to figure that out, I said. Well, you've got time, Janet said, raising her glass. Here's to figuring it out. We clinked glasses, and I felt something shift inside me. A door opening. A possibility emerging. On my last night in New York, December 29th, I went to the spa I'd booked. It was one of those places that feels like a temple, all soft lighting and quiet music and people who speak in hushed, reverent tones. I got a massage that made me cry, not because it hurt, but because it was the first time in longer than I could remember that someone had touched me with care. The masseuse's hands worked through knots I didn't even know I had, releasing tension I'd been holding in my shoulders, my neck, my back. You carry a lot of stress here, she said softly, pressing into a particularly tight spot. Do you do a lot of caretaking? I almost laughed. You could say that. You need to let people take care of you sometimes too. Such a simple statement. Such a radical concept. After the massage, I sat in the relaxation room wrapped in a plush robe, drinking cucumber water and feeling like I was made of light. And I thought, I want to feel like this all the time. Not physically, though that would be nice. But emotionally. I wanted to feel valued and cared for and like my needs mattered. I wanted to stop being invisible. The next morning, I packed my suitcase, checked out of my hotel, and took a taxi to the airport. As the city disappeared behind me, I felt something I hadn't expected. I felt ready. Ready to go home. Ready to face Daniel. Ready to have the conversation I'd been avoiding for 5 years. Ready to stop being the woman everyone else needed me to be and start being the woman I actually was. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to make myself small anymore. I got home on December 30th, late afternoon, when the sun was already starting to set and the air had that particular quality of coldness that makes you grateful for central heating. Patricia was watching from her window when my taxi pulled up, and she came outside immediately, bundled in a thick coat and a concerned expression. Helen. Thank God you're back. Your son has been by 3 times looking for you. Has he? I said, pulling my suitcase from the trunk. He seemed very worried. I'll bet he was. Patricia helped me carry my bags to the door, chattering about how nice it was that I'd gotten away, how I'd looked so happy when I left. She didn't ask why Daniel had been worried, didn't pry into whatever family drama she'd sensed hovering around the edges. That's what I loved about Patricia. She knew when to be nosy and when to mind her business. Inside, my house was exactly as I'd left it. Quiet. Orderly. Empty. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone. I'd kept it off for most of the trip, only turning it on occasionally to check messages. Now, with a full signal and nowhere left to hide, I powered it on and watched the notifications flood in. 23 missed calls from Daniel. 6 from Chloe. 31 text messages. 4 voicemails. I took a sip of tea and started reading. The messages from Christmas Day were panicked and angry. The ones from the days after were confused and hurt. The most recent ones, from yesterday and this morning, were different. Asterisk Mom, please call me. I need to talk to you. Asterisk. Asterisk I know you're mad at me. I think I understand why. Please come home so we can talk. Asterisk. Asterisk I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry. Asterisk. I stared at that last message for a long time. I'm sorry. It was a start. Not enough, but a start. I finished my tea, unpacked my suitcase, and took a long shower. Then I sat down on my couch and called my son. He answered before the first ring finished. Mom. Hi, Daniel. Oh my God, Mom, where have you been? I've been so worried. I told you where I was. New York. But your phone was off. Because I wanted it to be off. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, could practically feel him trying to figure out what to say next. Can I come over? He asked finally. I think we need to talk. Yes, I said. I think we do. He arrived 30 minutes later, pulling into my driveway in that expensive car he'd bought to impress people who didn't care. I watched him through the window as he sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, gathering courage. When he finally came to the door, he looked terrible. Exhausted. Like he hadn't slept properly in days. Good. I let him in and we sat in my living room, me on my armchair, him on the couch, a careful distance between us that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Mom, he started, and his voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I waited. I didn't realize, I didn't see. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated with himself. I took you for granted. I treated you like you were just there. Like you didn't have your own life, your own plans, your own personhood. Personhood. That was actually a good word for it. I just assumed you'd always say yes, he continued. And I never stopped to ask if you wanted to. I never stopped to think about what it cost you. No, I said quietly. You didn't. And the thing with Christmas, asking you to cook for 43 people with 2 days' notice. Mom, that was insane. I see that now. It was disrespectful and selfish and I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking I'd do it, I said. Because I always do it. He nodded miserably. Yeah. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear kids playing in someone's yard, their voices high and happy. How did Christmas turn out? I asked, even though I already knew. Daniel laughed, a bitter, embarrassed sound. It was a disaster. Total disaster. We ended up ordering pizza and Chinese food and eating off paper plates. Chloe's mother didn't speak to us for 2 days. Her brother made jokes about it being the most memorable Christmas ever, and not in a good way. I'm sorry it was difficult, I said, and I meant it. I didn't want Daniel to suffer. I just wanted him to understand. Mom, why didn't you just tell me no? And there it was. The question beneath all the other questions. I took a breath. Because every time I thought about saying no, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd be disappointed. Afraid you'd be angry. Afraid you'd stop needing me, and if you didn't need me, why would you want me around? Daniel's face crumpled. Mom. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's how I felt. Like the only value I had in your life was what I could do for you. That's not true. Isn't it? I looked at him directly. Daniel, when was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my job, my friends, my interests? When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about what you needed from me? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. He couldn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer. I love you, I said, and my voice was thick with emotion. I love you more than anything in this world. But I can't keep being the person you want me to be. I can't keep making myself smaller and quieter and more convenient so you feel comfortable. I never wanted you to be smaller. Maybe not consciously, but that's what happened anyway. Daniel was crying now, really crying, and it took everything in me not to get up and hug him, not to smooth his hair and tell him it was okay, that we'd figure it out, that everything would be fine. But I stayed in my chair. Because this was important. This moment, this conversation, this reckoning, it was the most important thing we'd ever done together. I don't want to lose you, Daniel said through his tears. You're not going to lose me. But things have to change. How? Tell me how to fix this. You can start, I said slowly, by seeing me. Really seeing me. Not as your mother who's always available, but as a person with her own life. A person who has needs and wants and limitations. Okay. And you can start respecting my time. That means asking, not telling. That means planning ahead instead of expecting me to drop everything. That means accepting when I say no. Okay. And Daniel. I leaned forward. You can start saying thank you. Not just casually, not just as an afterthought. Really acknowledging what I do for you and letting me know you appreciate it. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I can do that. I will do that. I hope so. Because I'm not going back to the way things were. I can't. We sat there for a while longer, talking through specifics. What the new boundaries would look like. How we'd handle holidays going forward. How he could rebuild the trust he'd damaged. It wasn't a comfortable conversation. It was messy and painful and full of long silences where we both had to sit with the weight of what had been broken between us. But it was real. And real was better than pretend. Before Daniel left, he hugged me, a long, tight hug that felt different from the perfunctory hugs we'd been exchanging for years. I love you, Mom, he said into my shoulder. I'm sorry I forgot to show it. I love you too, sweetheart. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of relief and sadness and hope. We weren't fixed. You don't fix 5 years of hurt in one conversation. But we'd started. That night, I got a text from Daniel. Thank you for not giving up on me. And thank you for everything you've done for me over the years. I know I haven't said it enough. I'm going to do better. I smiled and typed back. I believe you. And I did. Or at least, I wanted to. But here's the thing about people. They don't change overnight. They have good intentions and sincere apologies and genuine moments of clarity. And then they go back to their normal lives, and slowly, gradually, those old patterns start to creep back in. I knew this. I'd seen it happen 1,000 times in 1,000 different relationships. So while I appreciated Daniel's apology, while I valued our conversation, I wasn't naive enough to think everything would be different now. Real change takes time. And accountability. And consistent effort. And I was prepared to wait and see which version of my son would show up going forward. The one who'd had a wake-up call, or the one who'd just tell me what I wanted to hear and then expect everything to go back to normal. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted in a million years, was what was going to happen next. Because the universe, it turns out, has a sense of humor. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you exactly what you need right when you need it most. Even if it comes in the most unexpected package. 3 weeks after Christmas, I was back at work. It felt good to be there, in my office, surrounded by my projects, doing the work I was actually good at and got paid for. It felt good to be Helen, the director of operations, instead of Helen, the perpetually available mother. My company, a mid-sized consulting firm called Stratton & Associates, was in the middle of a major transition. We'd been acquired by a larger firm 6 months earlier, and now we were in the delicate process of integration. New leadership, new systems, new corporate culture. It was the kind of challenge I thrived on. I'd been tasked with coordinating the transition team, a group of 15 people from both companies who were responsible for making sure the merger went smoothly. It meant a lot of meetings, a lot of careful diplomacy, a lot of managing competing priorities and fragile egos. In other words, it was exactly the kind of complex, high-stakes work that required every skill I'd developed over 30 years in the business world. On January 21st, I had a meeting with the new executive team from the parent company. They were coming to our office for a site visit, to meet the staff, tour the facilities, and get a sense of how we operated. I'd spent the previous week preparing, making sure everything was perfect, that we put our best foot forward, that these people who now controlled our futures would see us as valuable and competent. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in our main conference room. At 1:45, I was standing outside the conference room with my colleague David, running through the agenda one last time, when I heard voices in the lobby. "They're here," David said. I smoothed my jacket, took a breath, and walked toward the lobby to greet them. There were 4 of them, 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in expensive suits, all carrying themselves with the particular confidence that comes from being in charge. The woman stepped forward first, extending her hand. Helen Garrett. I'm Catherine Mills, VP of Operations for the parent company. It's wonderful to finally meet you in person. We shook hands, and I felt that immediate click you sometimes get with people. That sense of, oh, we're going to get along. Catherine introduced me to her colleagues. The CFO, whose name was Richard. The head of HR, whose name was James. And finally, the CEO. And this is our CEO, William Brennan, Catherine said. He's been particularly excited to meet you. Your reputation precedes you. I turned to shake the CEO's hand, preparing my most professional smile. And froze. Because William Brennan wasn't a stranger. He was Daniel's boss. Not his direct supervisor. William Brennan ran a multi-billion-dollar company. But Daniel worked for one of their subsidiary divisions, and I'd heard him talk about Mr. Brennan countless times over the past few years. The CEO who was brilliant and demanding and impossible to impress. The CEO whose approval Daniel sought like it was oxygen. And here he was, standing in my office, looking at me with clear recognition in his eyes. Ms. Garrett, he said, his voice warm. It's a pleasure. We shook hands, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise. Realization. He knew who I was. And I had no idea how. The meeting went well, better than well, actually. We toured the facilities, discussed integration challenges, reviewed our project timelines. I presented the transition plan I developed, walking them through each phase, answering questions, demonstrating my team's preparedness. Catherine was impressed. I could see it in the way she leaned forward when I spoke, the way she asked follow-up questions that showed she was really listening. But it was William Brennan's reaction that surprised me most. He was quiet during most of the meeting, letting his team ask the questions, but I could feel him watching me. Not in a creepy way, in an evaluating way. Like he was taking my measure. Toward the end of the meeting, he finally spoke. Ms. Garrett, I have to say, this is one of the most thorough transition plans I've seen. You've clearly thought through every potential complication. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. I've been doing this kind of work for a long time. How long? 32 years, sir. He nodded slowly. Catherine tells me you're the person who's been holding this operation together during the transition. That without you, things would have fallen apart months ago. I glanced at Catherine, who smiled. I have a good team, I said. We work well together. Don't be modest, Catherine said. You're the one who keeps everyone organized and on track. You're the one who solves problems before they become crises. William Brennan leaned back in his chair, studying me. Ms. Garrett, I'd like to schedule a follow-up meeting with you. One-on-one. I want to discuss your role in the larger organization going forward. My heart started beating faster. Of course. After the meeting ended and I'd walked the executive team back to the lobby, after I'd shaken hands and smiled and promised to follow up, after they'd climbed into their town car and driven away, I went back to my office and closed the door. And tried to process what had just happened. William Brennan wanted to meet with me one-on-one. William Brennan, Daniel's CEO, the man my son practically worshipped, had just told me he was impressed with my work. I should have felt excited. Proud. Instead, I felt strangely apprehensive. That evening, my phone rang while I was making dinner. Daniel. Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. Since our conversation after Christmas, Daniel had been better about calling. Not perfect, but better. He'd called twice a week, asking about my life, telling me about his. Baby steps. How was your day? He asked. Interesting, actually. We had the executive team from the parent company visit our office today. There was a pause. Wait, really? The executive team? Ham. Was Mr. Brennan there? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. He was, actually. Holy shit, Mom. What did he say? What was he like? He was very professional. Complimentary, actually. He liked the transition plan I'd put together. Another pause, longer this time. Mr. Brennan complimented your work. He did. Wow. That's huge, Mom. He never compliments anyone. Like, ever. People in my division talk about it all the time, how impossible he is to impress. Well, apparently I impressed him. I could hear the smile in Daniel's voice. That's amazing. I'm proud of you. It was such a small thing, but it meant everything. Daniel being proud of me, not because I'd done something for him, but because I'd done something for myself. Thanks, sweetheart. Hey, Mom? Can I ask you something? Of course. When Mr. Brennan was there, did he mention me at all? And there it was. Even in this moment, even when I was telling him about my professional achievement, Daniel was thinking about how it might affect him. I sighed quietly. No, honey, he didn't mention you. Oh, okay. I just thought maybe, since he knows you're my mom. Daniel, I said gently, he doesn't know I'm your mom. What? How could he not know? Because it didn't come up. We were talking about work, not our personal lives. But. And even if it had come up, why would that matter? Silence on the other end of the line. Daniel, my professional accomplishments aren't about you. They're about me. About the work I've done, the expertise I've built over 3 decades. They're not a reflection on you, and they're not a tool for you to use to advance your own career. I didn't mean it like that. Didn't you? Another long silence. Then, quietly, maybe I did. I'm sorry. You're right. This is your thing, not mine. I'm happy for you, Mom. Really. Thank you. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, staring at the pot of soup I'd been stirring, thinking about how much had changed in the last month, and how much had stayed exactly the same. Daniel was trying. I could see that. But old habits die hard, and the habit of seeing me primarily as an extension of himself was deeply ingrained. I wondered if he'd ever fully break free of it. I wondered if I'd ever stop hoping he would. The one-on-one meeting with William Brennan was scheduled for the following Friday. It was set to take place at the parent company's headquarters downtown, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that made me feel simultaneously impressed and intimidated. I dressed carefully that morning. My best suit, the navy one that made me look professional and competent. Simple jewelry. Hair pulled back. I wanted to look like someone who belonged in rooms where important decisions were made. Because maybe, just maybe, I was about to be in one of those rooms. William Brennan's office was on the 42nd floor, with windows that overlooked the entire city. His assistant, a polished young man who looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, offered me coffee and asked me to wait. I sat in the elegant waiting area, trying to calm my nerves, trying not to think about what this meeting might mean. At exactly 2 p.m., the assistant told me Mr. Brennan was ready. I walked into his office, and William Brennan stood up from behind his massive desk, smiling. Ms. Garrett. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Brennan. Please, call me William. And please, sit. I sat in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, and he sat back down, folding his hands on the desk in front of him. I'm going to cut right to the chase, he said. I was extremely impressed with what I saw at your office last week. Catherine has been singing your praises for months, but seeing you in action confirmed everything she said. I appreciate that. We're in the process of restructuring our operations division, William continued, creating a more integrated system across all our subsidiaries. And we need someone to lead that effort. Someone with your experience, your organizational skills, your ability to manage complex transitions. My heart started pounding. Are you offering me a position? I'm offering you a promotion. Senior Vice President of Integrated Operations. You'd be overseeing operations across 5 companies, managing a team of 50 people, reporting directly to Catherine. I stared at him, my mind racing. SVP. That was 2 levels above my current position. That was the kind of role I'd dreamed about but never actually thought I'd get, not at my age, not this late in my career. The salary would be significantly higher than what you're making now, William said, sliding a folder across the desk. The details are in here, along with the benefits package, stock options, and a signing bonus. I opened the folder with trembling hands and looked at the number on the first page. The salary was almost double what I currently made. This is an incredible offer, I managed. You've earned it, Ms. Garrett. From everything I've seen and heard, you're exactly the kind of leader we need. I looked up at him, at this man who held so much power in Daniel's professional world, and I felt something shift inside me. This was mine. This opportunity, this recognition, this moment, it belonged to me. Not because I was someone's mother or someone's helper or someone's anything. Because I was good at what I did. There's one thing I should probably mention, William said, leaning back in his chair. I believe your son works for one of our subsidiaries. Daniel Garrett. My stomach dropped. Yes, he does. I thought the last name might be a coincidence, but I checked. He's in our Western Regional Office, Sales Division. That's right. William smiled slightly. I want you to know that his employment has no bearing on my decision to offer you this position. In fact, I wasn't aware of the connection until after I'd already decided I wanted to bring you on board. You're not getting this job because of your son. You're getting it because you're the best candidate. I felt tears prick my eyes, and I blinked them back. Thank you for saying that. It's the truth. And speaking candidly, Ms. Garrett, your son is a decent employee, but he's not exceptional. You, on the other hand, are exceptional. I hope he knows how lucky he is to have you as a mother. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. Take the weekend to think about it, William said. Discuss it with your family if you need to, but I hope you'll say yes. We'd be lucky to have you. I shook his hand and left his office in a daze. In the elevator down, I stared at my reflection in the polished metal doors and barely recognized myself. I looked different. Taller. Stronger. I looked like a woman who'd just been offered the opportunity of a lifetime. That night, I called Daniel. Mom, hi. How did the meeting go? I took a breath. He offered me a job. A big job. Senior Vice President of Integrated Operations. Silence. Then, holy shit. Mom, that's incredible. Congratulations. Thank you. Wait, so you'd be working at headquarters? You'd be, like, a senior executive? Yes. More silence, and I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Does Mr. Brennan know I'm your son? He asked finally. And there it was again. The question that revealed everything. He does now, I said. He looked it up after the meeting. What did he say? I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to tell Daniel what William had said about him being decent but not exceptional. Part of me wanted to protect his feelings, to smooth things over, to be the mother who made everything easier. But I was done with that version of myself. He said you're a decent employee, I told him honestly. And he said I'm exceptional. And he said he hopes you know how lucky you are to have me as a mother. The silence that followed was so long I thought the call had dropped. Daniel. I'm here. His voice was quiet. He's right. I am lucky. And I haven't acted like it. No, I agreed. You haven't. But you're learning. Mom, are you going to take the job? I think so. Yes. You should. You absolutely should. This is huge. This is, God, I'm so proud of you. And this time, I believed him. Because this time, his pride wasn't about how my success might reflect on him. It was just about me. That weekend, I signed the paperwork. I accepted the position. I said yes to the opportunity I'd spent 30 years earning. And when I called to tell Daniel, when I heard the genuine happiness in his voice, when he said my mom, the SVP, not in a boastful way, but in an awed way, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like he saw me. Really saw me. Not as the woman who cooked his meals or cleaned his house or made his life easier, but as the woman who'd built a career and earned respect and deserved recognition. As myself. If you've made it this far in this story, if you've stuck with me through Christmas disasters and New York adventures and corporate meetings, I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing me too. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever felt like the people around you only see you as what you can do for them and not who you actually are, I want you to know something. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to say no. You deserve to choose yourself. And don't forget to check the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories about people who found their voice, who set boundaries, who remembered they were worth more than they'd been told. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're not done yet. This story is about to take one more turn. Because what happened next, the moment when Daniel finally, truly understood what he'd been doing, came in the most unexpected way possible. My first official day as Senior Vice President was February 15th. I moved into a new office, a real office with a door and windows and a view of the city. I met my new team, 50 people across 5 companies who would be reporting to me either directly or indirectly. I dove into the work with an energy I hadn't felt in years. It was terrifying and exhilarating and exactly what I needed. Catherine Mills became not just my boss but my mentor. She was 15 years younger than me but had a wisdom about navigating corporate politics that I admired. She taught me which battles to fight and which to let go. She advocated for my ideas in rooms I wasn't in yet. She treated me like a colleague, not a subordinate. For the first time in my professional life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Daniel and I were talking more regularly now. He'd call once or twice a week, and our conversations had shifted. He asked about my work with genuine interest. He told me about his projects without expecting me to drop everything and help. He was learning, slowly, to see me as a whole person. But he still didn't quite understand the full scope of what had changed. He still thought of me as Mom who also happened to have a fancy job. Not as Helen Garrett, SVP, who also happened to be his mother. That distinction mattered more than he realized. In early March, the company held its annual leadership dinner, a formal event where executives from all the subsidiaries came together for networking and recognition awards. It was being held at one of the city's most exclusive hotels, the kind of place with crystal chandeliers and servers in white gloves. I'd been invited, of course. As an SVP, I was expected to attend. What I didn't know until 2 weeks before the event was that mid-level managers from the subsidiaries had also been invited this year. Something about fostering connection between leadership and emerging talent. Which meant Daniel would be there. When I found out, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety. This would be the first time Daniel would see me in my new professional context. Not just hear about it over the phone, but actually witness it. I wondered how he'd react. The night of the dinner, I wore a black dress that made me feel elegant and powerful. I'd gotten my hair done that afternoon, and I'd splurged on new heels. When I looked in the mirror before I left, I barely recognized myself. I looked like someone important. Because I was someone important. When I arrived at the hotel, the ballroom was already filling up with people. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing server and made my way through the crowd, saying hello to colleagues, meeting people I'd only communicated with via email. And then I saw Daniel. He was standing near the bar with a group of other young managers, laughing at something someone had said. He looked good, confident, comfortable, in his element. He hadn't seen me yet. I watched him for a moment, this man I'd raised, and I felt a complicated surge of emotion. Pride. Love. And something else. Something like, you have no idea what's about to happen, do you? Before I could decide whether to approach him, Catherine appeared at my elbow. Helen, there you are. Come on, we're sitting at the head table. William wants to introduce you to some people. The head table. Where the C-suite executives Saturday. Where the most important people in the company Saturday. I followed Catherine across the ballroom, and as we walked, I felt people's eyes on me, tracking my movement. Wondering who I was, if they didn't already know. The head table was on a raised platform at the front of the room. William Brennan was already seated, along with the CFO, the COO, and several other senior executives I'd met over the past month. William stood when he saw me. Helen, excellent. I want you to meet Margaret Chen, our board chair. Margaret, this is Helen Garrett, our new SVP of Integrated Operations. The one I was telling you about. I shook hands with Margaret Chen, a formidable woman in her 70s who looked at me with sharp, assessing eyes. William has been singing your praises, she said. He tells me you're the reason the transition has been so smooth. I have a great team, I said. Don't be modest, William interjected. You're the one driving everything. We chatted for a few more minutes, and then Catherine steered me to my seat, right next to William, in a position of clear prominence. As I sat down, I glanced out at the ballroom, and locked eyes with Daniel. He was staring at me, his mouth slightly open, his expression one of complete shock. He'd just realized where I was sitting, who I was sitting with, what my position actually meant. I gave him a small smile and turned my attention back to the table. Dinner was served, course after course of beautiful food I was too nervous to fully enjoy. The conversation at our table was fascinating, ranging from business strategy to politics to literature. These were smart, accomplished people who treated me as an equal. Daniel kept looking over at me. I could feel his gaze from across the room, could see him leaning over to whisper to the guy next to him, probably asking questions. After dinner, William stood up to give a speech. He talked about the company's achievements over the past year, the successful acquisitions, the growth projections. He thanked various people for their contributions. And then he said something I wasn't expecting. I want to take a moment to recognize someone who joined our leadership team recently but has already made an extraordinary impact. Helen Garrett, our SVP of Integrated Operations, has brought a level of expertise and strategic thinking that has elevated everything we do. Helen, would you stand? My face flushed as I stood up, and the room erupted in applause. I could see Daniel in the crowd, clapping along with everyone else, his expression stunned. William continued, Helen brings over 30 years of operational excellence to this role. She's someone who sees around corners, who solves problems before they become crises, who makes everyone around her better. We're incredibly fortunate to have her, and I have no doubt she'll be instrumental in our continued success. More applause. I sat down, my heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. William Brennan, the CEO my son idolized, the man Daniel spent years trying to impress, had just publicly praised me in front of 200 people. Had just called me instrumental to the company's success. Had just positioned me as one of the most important people in the organization. After the speeches ended, the dinner shifted into a networking reception. People mingled, drinks flowed, conversations hummed throughout the ballroom. I was immediately surrounded by people wanting to introduce themselves, to congratulate me, to talk about projects and initiatives and opportunities. I was in the middle of a conversation with the head of HR when I felt a hand on my elbow. Daniel. Mom, he said quietly. Can I talk to you for a second? I excused myself from the conversation and followed Daniel to a quieter corner of the ballroom. He looked dazed. Overwhelmed. Like he'd just had his entire understanding of reality reorganized. Mom, I had no idea. No idea about what? About all of this. About what your job actually means. About how important you are here. I raised an eyebrow. Daniel, I told you I was an SVP. What did you think that meant? I don't know. I guess I thought it was, like, a nice title. I didn't realize you were sitting at the head table with William Brennan. I didn't realize he thought of you as one of his key executives. Why wouldn't he? Daniel ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he always made when he was flustered. I've worked here for 3 years, Mom. 3 years. And I've never even been in the same room as Mr. Brennan for more than 5 minutes. And you've been here for, what, 6 weeks? And you're sitting next to him at dinner, and he's publicly praising you, and everyone here knows who you are. Yes, I said simply. I feel like an idiot. Why? Because I've been treating you like you were just my mom. Like you were someone who existed to help me and take care of me. And this whole time, you were this person. This accomplished, respected, important person. And I never saw it. I looked at my son, at this man who was finally starting to understand. Daniel, I've always been this person, I said softly. I've been working at this level for years. I've been managing complex projects and leading teams and solving impossible problems for decades. That didn't suddenly start when I took this job. The only thing that changed is that you're finally seeing it. He nodded slowly, tears welling in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know you are. No, I mean, I'm sorry for all of it. For treating you like you were invisible. For taking you for granted. For never asking about your work or your life or what you needed. For seeing you as just Mom instead of as Helen, this incredible woman who built an entire career while also raising me by herself. Now I was crying too. I'm sorry it took me so long to see you, Daniel whispered. Really see you. I hugged him then, right there in the corner of that fancy ballroom, and we held on to each other the way we hadn't in years. When we pulled apart, Daniel wiped his eyes and laughed shakily. Everyone in my department is going to be so jealous when they find out the SVP is my mom. I smiled. Just don't expect any special treatment. Trust me, I won't. I wouldn't dare. We stood there for a moment, and then Daniel said something that surprised me. Can I ask you something? Of course. That day before Christmas, When you left and went to New York. Was that when you decided you were done being invisible? I thought about it. About that moment in Daniel's driveway when he told me to cook for 43 people. About the plane ticket to New York. About the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. No, I said finally. I think I'd been deciding for a long time. That day was just when I finally acted on it. Daniel nodded. I'm glad you did. I know it was hard for me, and I know I didn't handle it well. But Mom, I'm glad you did it. Because you deserve to be seen. You always have. Before I could respond, someone called my name. I turned to see William Brennan gesturing me over to meet someone. I should go, I said. Yeah. Of course. Daniel smiled. Go be important, Mom. I'll talk to you later. I squeezed his hand and walked back into the crowd. Back into my life as Helen Garrett, SVP. Back into the space I'd earned. And as I shook hands and made small talk and networked with people who respected me, I felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. I felt visible. Not because my son finally saw me, though that helped, but because I finally saw myself. Spring came early that year. By late March, the trees were already budding, and there was a warmth in the air that made everything feel possible. I'd been in my new role for 6 weeks, and I was thriving. The work was challenging in all the right ways. I was managing integration projects across 5 companies, coordinating teams in different cities, solving problems that required creativity and strategic thinking. Every day brought new puzzles to solve, new relationships to build, new opportunities to prove myself. And I was good at it. Really good. My team respected me. My colleagues valued my input. And William and Catherine trusted me with increasingly important decisions. For the first time in my professional life, I wasn't just executing someone else's vision, I was helping to create the vision. It was intoxicating. My relationship with Daniel had shifted too. Not overnight, nothing real ever happens overnight, but gradually, in small, meaningful ways. He called me now not just out of obligation, but because he wanted to talk. About his work, yes, but also about mine. He asked questions about my projects, my challenges, my goals. He listened when I talked. He remembered details from previous conversations. He saw me. But more than that, he'd started to make amends in practical ways. In early April, Daniel and Chloe invited me to dinner at their house. When I arrived, I was surprised to find that they'd hired a catering service. The table was set, the food was prepared, and when I walked in, Chloe hugged me and said, "We wanted you to be able to just enjoy the evening. No cooking, no cleaning, no work. Just family." It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. During dinner, Daniel told me about a project he'd been working on, a major client pitch that had gone well. He was excited, animated, clearly proud of himself. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said. "You should be proud. That sounds like a lot of work." It was. But you know what helped? Thinking about how you approach complex projects. The way you break things down into manageable pieces, the way you anticipate problems before they happen. I've been trying to apply some of that to my own work. I blinked back tears. I'm honored that I could help. Mom, you've been helping me my whole life. I just wasn't paying attention. Later, after dinner, Chloe pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Helen, I owe you an apology," she said quietly. I was surprised. Chloe and I had always maintained a polite distance, never hostile, but never particularly warm either. An apology for what? For how I treated you. For going along with Daniel when he expected you to do all that work for us. For never standing up and saying, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't be asking your mother to be our personal servant." She looked genuinely distressed. I was raised to believe that mothers-in-law just did those things. That it was normal. But it wasn't normal, and it wasn't fair, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means a lot." "I want us to have a better relationship going forward," Chloe continued. "Not just you as Daniel's mom, but as your own person. I'd like to get to know you better. The real you." "I'd like that too." We hugged, and I felt something loosen in my chest. A knot of resentment I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Things weren't perfect. Daniel still occasionally fell into old patterns, asking me for favors without thinking, assuming I'd be available, forgetting that I had my own demanding career now. But when I pointed it out, he apologized and corrected himself. He was learning. We were both learning. How to have a relationship that was balanced instead of one-sided. How to be mother and son without one of us disappearing in the process. In May, my company held a quarterly review meeting. All the senior executives gathered to assess progress, discuss challenges, and plan for the next quarter. I'd prepared extensively for this meeting. I knew my numbers cold, had solutions ready for every potential objection, had practiced my presentation until I could do it in my sleep. When it was my turn to present, I stood up in front of 20 of the most powerful people in the company and laid out what my division had accomplished. The integration was ahead of schedule. Costs were under budget. Employee satisfaction scores had increased across all 5 companies. We'd identified and resolved potential conflicts before they became problems. We'd streamlined processes that were saving the company millions of dollars. The numbers were undeniable. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then William Brennan started clapping, and everyone else joined in. "Helen, that's exceptional work," William said. "Truly exceptional." Catherine leaned forward. "I want to echo that. Helen has exceeded every expectation we had for this role." Margaret Chen, the board chair who was visiting for this meeting, looked at me thoughtfully. "Ms. Garrett, how long are you planning to stay with us?" I laughed, surprised by the question. "As long as you'll have me." "Good. Because we have bigger plans for you." After the meeting, Margaret pulled me aside. "I'm serious about what I said in there," she told me. "The board has been watching your progress. We're impressed. We want to make sure you're challenged, that you're growing, that you have a clear path forward here." "I appreciate that. How would you feel about taking on a C-suite role in the next year or two? Chief Operating Officer, perhaps?" I stared at her. Cool. That was the 3rd highest position in the entire company. I'd be honored, I managed. And terrified. But mostly honored. Margaret smiled. "The best leaders are always a little terrified. It means they understand the responsibility." That evening, I called Daniel to tell him about the meeting. About the praise, the success, the possibility of becoming COO. "Mom, that's insane," he said, and I could hear the awe in his voice. "Cool. Do you know what that means?" "I have some idea, yes. You'd be one of the most powerful people in the company. You'd be, Mom, you'd be running the entire operation. Eventually, maybe. If I'm offered the role and if I accept it." "Of course you should accept it. This is incredible." I smiled, feeling that warm glow of my son's genuine pride. "It is pretty incredible, isn't it?" "I need to ask you something," Daniel said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Okay. When I was growing up, when Dad left and you were working 2 jobs and going to school at night, did you ever imagine this? That you'd end up here?" I thought about it. About that exhausted, scared 29-year-old woman trying to hold everything together. About all the nights I'd stayed up late studying while Daniel slept. About all the times I'd wondered if I was doing enough, being enough. "No," I said honestly. "I never imagined this. I was just trying to survive. To give you a good life. To make sure we were okay." "But you did more than that. You built this whole incredible career. You became this amazing, powerful woman. And you did it while raising me by yourself." "I did it because of you, Daniel. Because I wanted to show you that you could survive hard things. That you could build something meaningful even when life knocks you down." "Well, you definitely showed me that." He paused. "Mom." "Yeah. Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up. On yourself. On me. On us. You could have, you know. That day before Christmas. You could have walked away and never come back. But you didn't." "Of course I didn't. You're my son. I love you." "I love you too, Mom. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." After we hung up, I sat in my living room, the same living room where I'd sat on that December afternoon when I booked my flight to New York, and I thought about everything that had changed. 6 months ago, I was invisible. Now I was seen. 6 months ago, I was exhausted from always saying yes. Now I knew how to say no. 6 months ago, I was defined by what I could do for other people. Now I was defined by who I actually was. And you know what? It felt amazing. If you're watching this and you're thinking about your own life, about the ways you've made yourself small, the times you've said yes when you wanted to say no, the people who take you for granted, I want you to remember something. It's never too late to change the story. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to become visible. I'm 63 years old, and I'm just now stepping fully into my power. Imagine what you could do if you started now. Don't wait. Don't make yourself small. Don't let people treat you like you're less than you are. You deserve better. And if you need a reminder of that, check out the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories of people who found their strength, who set boundaries, who remembered their worth. And hit that subscribe button if this story has meant something to you. Because your story matters too. We're almost at the end now. Just one more chapter. One more piece of this puzzle. The piece where everything comes full circle. It's Christmas Eve again. 1 year since I left Daniel's house and flew to New York. 1 year since I chose myself instead of choosing to be convenient. A lot has changed in a year. I'm still SVP of Integrated Operations, though the COO conversation is getting more serious. William has told me privately that it's not a matter of if, but when. The board is waiting for the right moment to make the announcement. I've traveled to London, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo for work. I've led presentations for investors and board members. I've been quoted in industry publications. I've been invited to speak at conferences. I've become, in a word, successful. But more than that, more than the title or the salary or the recognition, I've become myself. The version of me that existed before I learned to shrink. Before I learned that my value was in what I could do for others rather than who I was. And today, on Christmas Eve, I'm sitting in my living room, wrapping presents and listening to music, completely at peace. My phone buzzes with a text from Daniel. * Mom, we're leaving in 20 minutes. See you soon. *. Because yes, I'm spending Christmas with Daniel and Chloe this year. But it's different now. So different. 3 months ago, in September, Daniel and Chloe sat me down and asked me how I wanted to spend the holidays this year. Not told me what they needed. Not assumed I'd show up and work. Asked me what I wanted. Honestly. I'd said, I'd like to have Christmas at my house this year. I want to cook, but because I want to, not because I have to. And I want it to be small. Just the 3 of us. Maybe a few close friends. Nothing elaborate. Just peaceful. Daniel had nodded immediately. That sounds perfect. What can we bring? What can we do to help? We'd planned it together. A real collaboration. Daniel was bringing wine and dessert. Chloe was handling appetizers. They'd insisted on arriving early to help me cook, to set the table, to do whatever needed doing. They were treating me like a host who deserved support, not a servant who should be grateful for the opportunity to serve. It was such a small thing. It meant everything. They arrive at 4 p.m., loaded down with bags and packages and huge smiles. Merry Christmas, Mom. Daniel wraps me in a hug that lifts me off my feet. Chloe hugs me too, then hands me a beautifully wrapped bottle of wine. This is the one you mentioned loving at that restaurant we went to. I tracked it down. Because she'd been listening. She'd remembered. We spend the next 2 hours in the kitchen together, cooking and laughing and telling stories. Daniel chops vegetables while I work on the turkey. Chloe sets the table, arranging everything beautifully, making my simple dining room look elegant. We work as a team. As equals. As people who respect each other. At one point, Daniel stops what he's doing and looks at me. This is nice, isn't it? Being together like this. It really is. I'm sorry about last year, Mom. About putting you in that position. About expecting you to. Daniel. I touch his arm gently. We've talked about this. You've apologized. You've changed. Let's not spend today looking backward. Let's just enjoy what we have now. He nods, blinking back tears. Okay. But for the record, I'm grateful for what happened. I know that sounds weird, but I am. Because if you hadn't left, if you hadn't forced me to see what I was doing, I might have kept treating you that way forever. And I would have lost you eventually. Really lost you. You didn't lose me. Because you were strong enough to make me pay attention. Thank you for that. Chloe joins us, wrapping her arms around both of us. This family is in a much better place than it was a year ago. She's right. We eat dinner at 6, the three of us crowded around my table, and it's perfect. Not elaborate, not designed to impress anyone. Just good food and good conversation and good company. After dinner, we exchange gifts. Daniel and Chloe got me a cashmere scarf I'd admired months ago, proof that they'd been paying attention. I got them tickets to a show they'd mentioned wanting to see. But Daniel has one more gift. He pulls out an envelope and hands it to me, looking nervous. This is different. I hope you like it. I open the envelope and pull out a card. On the front, in Daniel's handwriting, it says, "Certificate for 1 guilt-free no." I look up at him, confused. "Read inside," he says. I open the card. Inside, he's written, "Mom, this certificate entitles you to say no to any request I make, at any time, for any reason, without explanation, apology, or guilt. This is not a joke. This is a promise. I will never again make you feel like you owe me your time, your energy, or your labor just because you're my mother. You have given me everything. Now it's my turn to give you something, freedom. I love you. Daniel *. I stare at the words, reading them over and over, tears streaming down my face. Daniel, I whisper. I mean it, Mom. Every word. You don't owe me anything. Not your Christmas, not your weekends, not your help with anything. If I ask and you don't want to do it, you can just say no. And I'll accept it. No questions, no guilt trips, no making you feel bad about it. I look at my son, this man I raised, this man who hurt me, this man who learned and grew and changed, and I feel my heart overflow. Thank you, I manage. This is the most meaningful gift anyone has ever given me. Chloe reaches over and squeezes my hand. We both mean it, Helen. You're not our employee. You're not our problem solver. You're family. And we're going to treat you like it. We sit there together, the three of us, crying and laughing and holding each other. And I realize, this is what I walked away for. Not to punish Daniel. Not to prove a point. Not to make him suffer. But to reach this moment right here. The moment when he finally understood. When our relationship finally became what it should have been all along. Mutual. Respectful. Loving. Equal. Later that night, after Daniel and Chloe have gone home, after I've cleaned up the kitchen and blown out the candles, I sit by my window and look out at the quiet street. A year ago tonight, I was in New York. Alone but not lonely. Free but also frightened. Standing at the edge of a new version of myself and wondering if I'd made the right choice. Tonight, I know I did. Because choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's the most important choice you can make. I think about all the women, and men, honestly, who are watching this right now, nodding along because they see themselves in my story. People who've been taken for granted, overlooked, treated like they're less than they are. People who've been told they're so good at whatever thankless task needs doing. People who've made themselves small to make others comfortable. People who've forgotten that they matter. If that's you, I want you to hear me. You are not invisible. You are not your usefulness to others. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to say no. And if the people in your life can't handle that, if they can't respect your boundaries, if they can't see you as a whole person with your own needs and wants and dreams, then they don't deserve access to you. I know that's hard to hear. I know it feels impossible to imagine walking away from people you love. But sometimes walking away is the only thing that makes them pay attention. Sometimes you have to disappear before people realize you were there at all. I'm 64 years old now. I spent most of my life making other people comfortable, convenient, happy, being who they needed me to be instead of who I actually was. And then one day, 2 days before Christmas, I decided, no more. No more shrinking. No more apologizing for having needs. No more making myself invisible so others could shine. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. It was also the best thing I've ever done. Because now I'm here. Senior Vice President, soon to be COO, sitting in my home on Christmas Eve, content and whole and completely myself. And my son, my beautiful, flawed, learning son, sees me now. Really sees me. Not just as Mom, but as Helen. As the woman I've always been, underneath all the roles and expectations and obligations. And that's worth everything. If you've made it to the end of this story, Thank you. Thank you for listening, for staying with me, for seeing me too. And if my story has resonated with you, if it's made you think about your own life and your own relationships and your own boundaries, then I want you to do something for me. I want you to make a promise to yourself. Right now, wherever you are. Promise yourself that you'll stop making yourself small. Promise yourself that you'll start saying no when you want to say no. Promise yourself that you'll remember. Being kind to others doesn't mean being cruel to yourself. You deserve to be visible. You deserve to matter. You deserve to choose yourself. Don't wait until you're 63 years old and standing in a driveway, finally reaching your breaking point. Start now. Start today. Start by remembering that you're not invisible. You never were. You're just ready to finally be seen. And don't forget to check out the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories about people who found their power, their voice, their worth. Hit that subscribe button if this story touched you, because there are so many more stories to tell. Stories about people who were underestimated, overlooked, taken for granted, and who decided they deserved better. Your story matters too. Tell it. Live it. Own it. Be visible. My name is Helen Garrett. I'm 64 years old, and I am no longer invisible. And neither are you.